Um, yeah, I travelled from South Africa into Zimbabwe, and I think anybody knows anything about South Africa is it's certain parts of the country don't feel that safe. Always, you feel quite wary. It was refreshing to get into Zimbabwe because the atmosphere was very different. I felt you didn't see gangs of lads. It felt a bit sort of time trap. Um, Very much an old Commonwealth, British Commonwealth type of country, and yeah, very friendly. It felt very safe on the streets, but there was also a sense that it was going through hard times. There wasn't much on the shelves in certain shops, especially compared to South Africa. South Africa's a bit like Europe in that respect. The supermarkets are very similar to home. A lot of big brands like you see at home, but when you're in Zimbabwe, there's just none of that in comparison. Yeah, it just felt very old school, very pleasant, almost backwater. If that doesn't sound rude to to the Zimbabwean people. When I arrived in Bulawayo, yeah, just generally a very positive sense. You don't readily identify yourself as being necessarily in Africa. I think it's once you get out of the city and into the countryside that you really realise that you're in Africa. But the vibe in the city is a little bit different. Very quickly though, I sort of realised that something was amiss, particularly economically in the country. We were using Zimbabwean bond notes rather than a actual currency. You couldn't really call that a currency. Um, People were using forex. So if I came into the country with South African rand or US dollars or euros or pounds, they were worth a lot more than the official the rate. The bond was supposed to be 1 to 1 with the dollar, but that wasn't the reality. And you could see in the shops just in the first couple of weeks I was there that things were just going up ridiculously in price day to day to day. Um, so if you didn't have forex, in local terms, the inflation rate was absolutely frightening. And things were disappearing. Certain goods were disappearing off the shelves, and certain things were staying on the shelves just because they were so damn expensive. I purposely avoided listening to a lot of media before I went to Zimbabwe because once my decision was made to go there, I didn't want to give myself a fear about because the news tends to be about negative things. So what I discovered quite quickly was that there was a lot of political infighting going on in Zimbabwe at that time, um, with Mugabe and the ruling party in the country. Um, and yeah, very quickly you could appreciate that the country was headed towards economic disaster and also political disaster. So that started to reflect in political gatherings, and lots of police and army being present for those. The town pretty much, the city, sorry, of Bulawayo pretty much closing down for those events with roadblocks. Mugabe visited the city, for example, spoke in one of the local stadiums. And yeah, if you read local media and you spoke to people, it was really apparent that the country was headed towards a breaking point. Personally speaking, I also had my own circumstances where the Matabeleland football project, we weren't flying on the radar at the time. We kept things a bit undercover. We were fearful that the government and the secret police were monitoring us, and well, we knew they were monitoring us, and we were fearful that we would, that they would think that we were up to no good, and it was part of some movement, perhaps semi-independence for Matabeleland from Zimbabwe. It wasn't the case, but it made things doubly awkward when I first went to the country, and there were periods of time when if I wasn't coaching football, I just basically Self-isolated at home. Yeah, we knew for sure that we were being looked at. We knew certain secret police were, well, the people with not so secret people knew who they were, and we were followed from time to time. And yeah, a few times I thought I was followed, or yeah, a few strange events. Not all of those are even included in the book, but yeah, it was something that you were nervous that if we said the wrong thing, um, that we did the wrong thing, that we the whole project was about to get closed down at a moment's notice. We didn't use any social media or anything in the first couple of months. We didn't broadcast to the world what we were doing really. Yeah, we had police turn up, for example, at my training. I wasn't officially announced as the manager, so there was anyway as the one white guy that was hanging around. There was always interest about who I was, what I was up to, just in a natural, inquisitive way. People couldn't understand how a coach would go there and work for free, which I was doing. I was volunteering with them. So yeah, it created its own atmosphere around what we were doing. Um, and yeah, you mentioned the paranoia, and paranoia breeds paranoia, really. Initially, I went down and saw the lads play. Obviously, the first couple of weeks, I really kept um, an observational role. I let the two lads who were doing the coaching, Busani and Kanye, I let them continue to do their job, and I just observed really. Learned about the players, learnt about the training techniques that were being used, uh, about the conditions in Zimbabwe, and so that I was ready to come in at the correct time and start coaching them. I didn't think it was the right thing just to bulldoze my way in, to be honest. Anyone who's been to Africa, um, you will you'll know that there's just brilliant footballers everywhere on every spare bit of land, every bit of grass, every bit of concrete. You see people kicking the ball around. Invariably, there are a couple of good footballers in there. So it was no different. It was what you'd expect. I went down and watched. There's some brilliantly technical players. Their ability to control the ball and play 1-2 touch football on the directional surfaces they were playing on was just phenomenal. But there was also a great naivety in how they were playing. There was a lack of game strategy because of the quality of the pitches. There was no clear markings, so offside went out the window, and frankly, it wasn't played properly. So that meant defensive shape was a major issue, and yeah, you had certain players who were clearly talented but wanted to beat everyone else, including themselves. So yeah, it's a typical thing you'd expect, and it was clear that what it needed really was structure, and building up or working on the team mentality. It was already there, and the team philosophy was already there, but adding my philosophy to it, and with an eye obviously on the CONIFA World Cup and what we would be coming up against there. You've got to remember we were playing only African teams, only Zimbabwean teams, and we have to be ready to play European and teams from the Pacific the following summer. So yeah, it started. At the start, it was just having a more of a typical coaching session you see, with various drills worked on, a bit of a format to the coaching session, warm-up drills, and whatever you wanted to work on in that particular session. Always ending up with a game at the end, and always ending up with a little, how can I put it, a crossbar challenge or a dribble on the keeper or something interesting. So the lads went home, having a bit of a laugh at the end of the session as well. Yeah, and as things went on, that we just advanced that. We played a lot more friendlies. The quality of the team overall greatly improved. Eventually, we had a bit of a time when it perhaps went a bit downhill, but yeah, we started to improve, and So it became a bit more advanced of what we were doing in training. I was big on working with various rondos from the simplest to the most complicated. I thought that worked well for the lads, working on that first touch, but also encouraging a lot of movement and shapes and um, patterns of play. Um, Thinking about how we were going to put certain passes together, so that it became second nature. Um, Movements into space, working on. I had my own. I'm a striker myself, or been a striker myself, so I was very keen on how I used my strikers. We had goalkeepers who'd got brilliant kicking. We could go long, transition very quickly up the pitch. So there were various things that we worked on. Um, Very poorly organised defensively, and that was another thing which really needed working on. And that was something that I hadn't had so much experience on. Perhaps I'd had a bit in Latvia with that, but that was something we really needed to improve. And I think we managed that going into the tournament, and then even during the tournament itself, once the lads had experience playing against very good teams, they were able to adapt to the things that we taught them on the pitches in Zimbabwe. Big turning point, we played the Highlanders, one of the most famous football clubs in Africa. We played them at the Barberfield Stadium. It was a reserve team because they were playing in the Zimbabwean National League. So there were obviously some first team lads that dropped out that were playing, but essentially they were all pros. And we gave them a really good run for the money. We should have won it. We were all over them. We had lots of chances. I think we ended up losing 3-0, but that was a real turning point. The lads had belief from that. They understood that probably 2 or 3 of the best players on the pitch were our lads. And I think after that, the belief came in. And we started working very hard on all the things we could work hard on. And by the time we got to London, we were a very different team. And we know that because in London we were able to give big teams good games, or periods of games we were able to compete. Even against the European champions, we had a good 15-20 minutes where I think we were the better team. Yeah, biggest challenge of all was getting the team to London, because we got a good bunch of lads. They all loved the game. They all wanted to be there. So although professional standards or cultural sense of how you do things was perhaps a bit different between myself and some people at times, you'd got a bunch of lads who wanted nothing more than to go to London. But the big problem was raising best part of $30,000. We couldn't get sponsors in Zimbabwe because of the politics. Nobody wanted to touch us. They feared if they did sponsor us, the government would take away their licenses. Came close to getting a couple of big sponsors, but we lost them for that kind of reason. Yeah, most of the money came down to fundraising, to crowdfunding, to basically asking mates and mates of mates and anybody that you sort of got to hear about the team to help us out. I had a big emphasis of trying to get as much media as possible, and I hoped that was going to be the way for us to get the money, because I thought we needed big awareness, and I think I did a good job with that. Managed to get the BBC, CNN, Vice, different people interested in our story, and obviously once that happened, that's a big help in terms of once you got the awareness of getting people to give you money. Really, up to the final hour, we were fundraising. In fact, we didn't have enough money for all the plane tickets. A couple of the lads came a bit later. Borrowed some money. Even my dear mum gave us some money for a couple of weeks to make sure that we all went. But the biggest headache, even bigger headache, was the visas, because that was very expensive. I think it was about $150, $200 per person. It took a lot of paperwork, and what happened was just 2-3 days before we were due to fly to London, we got all the visas. We heard news off the record that all the visas had been rejected, and that none of the lads would be going to London. I think what happened then is the stuff of thriller novels. Bruce Grobbelaar was involved in that, and yeah, that's in my book, One Football No Nets. The whole story of especially what happened, how we actually got to London. It was all very, very bonkers. And if you get a chance to read that, it's you just think I'm making it up, frankly. But we got to London, as you know. Yeah, incredible honour, incredible experience. The biggest thing for me was just always getting the lads to London, regardless of how well we did. Of course, we had dreams of winning the tournament, of scoring our first goal, that sort of stuff, getting our first win. But it was all about getting to London, and when we got there, when I saw the lads walk into the hotel in London where we were staying, the team hotel, yeah, it's one of the best things I've ever experienced. Amazing experience to play in a World Cup. It's not the FIFA World Cup, but the CONIFA World Football Cup is still a massive thing. You've got teams from all over the world competing, and it was just a complete honour playing in non-league stadiums in London, and crowds coming down and being in the newspapers and stuff. It's being interviewed by BBC World Service, Deutsche Welle, that kind of thing. CNN making a documentary about us. Incredible. We knew that we had one big issue, and that was that we weren't able to prepare to play on 3G services that do not exist in Zimbabwe. I wish that the tournament had been held on the kind of surfaces we played on in Zimbabwe, because I'm pretty sure we'd have won in those conditions. But playing on the 3G was very, very strange for the lads. So the bounce was different, the roll of the ball was very different. They had new boots, and they didn't have any time to get used to wearing them. These are not excuses per se, but it was it made it very difficult. We went into the first game playing against the European champions, and yeah, we had a bad period in that game where we conceded a few goals, and it looked like it was going to be really horrible. Went to 6-0, but then the lads, yeah, we managed to turn their heads. We got them playing how they could. We scored a first ever goal, which was absolutely incredible. A moment I'll never forget. Brilliant goal as well. Great atmosphere at Sutton United's ground. A lot of people came down to watch us when we scored. There were celebrations. I think everyone in the stadium was cheering. Just, yeah, incredible experience that was. And after the game, the boys going over and not just applauding the crowd, but going and shaking hands with every single person that was in the crowd that wanted to shake hands with them. They just went along the side, shook hands with everyone. And I have people that have written to me since and said they've never seen something like that before or since, and it just was one of their greatest ever moments in football as a fan. And then being on the pitch, yeah, being interviewed by the international press, and Bruce Grobbelaar getting the lads in a huddle and kneeling below them and telling them that they should be very proud of themselves. That was just, yeah, what a moment. We played at Haringey Borough. We played a couple of games there. The atmosphere was absolutely incredible. We got loads of people came down to support us, members of the Zimbabwean community, from both sides of the community. So not just the Ndebele, the Matabele people, but the Shona came down and supported us. Phenomenal. Lots of people from all over the UK came and supported us. So there was an amazing atmosphere. We played Matabeleland, who got yeah, very, very traditional fans, very old school lads, proper lads, with the fireworks and the shirts off. And then we had our fans with the Zimbabwean animal hides. So it was crazy. Yeah, I'd never seen. A journalist from The Guardian said he'd never seen two such different sets of fans. It just the atmosphere is something you just probably can't explain. That was incredible. The lads singing and dancing in the car park afterwards, as they did every game, and exactly the Hungarian lads coming down and dancing with them in the car park, just absolutely bonkers. Yeah, and then we played Tuvalu and the South Pacific nation, United Nations country. Should be in FIFA. FIFA don't pay for them to compete. They don't give them the funding, but I'm sure in a few years' time they will be inside of FIFA, and one day we'll say that we played against a FIFA nation, and one day people will say that Matabeleland beat a FIFA nation, because we beat a country which was, yeah, absolutely incredible. Again, I'm using that word a bit too much, perhaps, but the emotions, the thought of you talk about a job done. Yeah, when you go back to those pitches, terrible pitches in Zimbabwe, and a few months later you're beating a country. It's just you can't believe it. What an achievement for the lads. And beyond that, we went undefeated for the rest of the tournament. CONIFA World Cup, you don't get knocked out, you play placement games. And after the first round, we lost on penalties, but we didn't. We drew 0-0 on the pitch, and then we won our next two games, and we kept clean sheets for the last three games of the tournament. So that was a massive thing. We worked defensively during the tournament. We had a lot of injuries and tired legs, but there's different things that you want to achieve, and scoring goals is important. But if you put a team out and it doesn't concede goals for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, you know that you're also being very successful as a group. Taking the lads out in London, we were very short of money, but we got some support, especially around that time in London, and it was very, very important for me that I got the lads out past the hotel and out to experience London. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, got them to see central London, got them along the Thames and went for a meal, got them to see, a lot of them are Arsenal fans. We went up to the Emirates. Unfortunately we didn't get inside, but saw that. We went into central London twice. The weather was gorgeous. There were people coming up to them asking for autographs and photos, and wonderful. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Overall, I think we did brilliant. I think we were. It's a lot in life comes down to luck. We lost one or two of our better players to injury early on. One lad didn't make it on the flight and came a bit later, and then his head wasn't in the right place immediately. And yes, these things worked against us, but we were never going to win the tournament because the lads didn't have the experience. They didn't have the experience of playing top class teams. They didn't have the experience of playing on those surfaces. But by the end of the tournament, we were getting stronger and stronger, where most teams were spent. And I think under other circumstances, the team could have finished much higher in the tournament. But I honestly think in the future that the Matabeleland team will go on and it will win a CONIFA World Cup, especially off the back of its experiences in London. Yeah, overall, we won games. We scored goals. We kept clean sheets. We played some beautiful football. We won the crowd over. We were most people's favourite team. People loved the boys, and the boys loved the people who came to support us. And overall, an absolutely remarkable experience, which I doubt personally, in my sense of my life, I don't think I'll ever come close to experiencing something like that in football again as a coach.